Hey Moon Jade family. Thank you so much for your love and support. Please like, subscribe, and share. It's a simple way to keep our stories coming. I couldn't do this without you. Thank you for being here. Now, grab a seat and let's continue the story. The rain hit Shanghai like a punishment. It lashed against glass, drummed on the streets, and blurred the neon skyline into something ghostly and dreamlike. Inside a small, half-empty bar tucked between skyscrapers, Nia Adesola sat alone, her reflection fractured by streaks of water crawling down the window. Her coat was soaked through, her hair clinging to her temples, and yet she couldn't bring herself to move. The whiskey in her glass had gone warm, but she kept sipping anyway, because it burned, and the burn kept her from falling apart. She had lost everything that morning. Her designs, stolen. Her company, gone. Her name, dragged through the mud by people with power she couldn't fight. And the cruelest part? She had trusted them. She had trusted him, the charming executive who promised her success and handed her ruin instead. Now, all she wanted was to disappear. She didn't notice the man until the sound of the door broke the rhythm of the storm. He stepped in from the rain, tall and composed, his presence sharp enough to shift the room's gravity. A black coat draped his shoulders, his shirt clung slightly from the weather, revealing the outline of lean muscle and quiet command. He was the kind of man people looked at twice, not because of beauty, but because of power. Their eyes met in the bar's dim light. His gaze was unreadable, steady, almost searching. He sat 2 seats away from her, ordered something clear and cold, and glanced her way again. "Long night?" he asked, his Mandarin accent brushing softly against the English words. Nia managed a dry laugh. "Long week. Long life." He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Then you're in the right place." They spoke little after that. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was heavy, electric. 2 strangers carrying wounds they didn't want to name. At some point, he shifted closer. "You look like someone trying not to feel." "And you look like someone who doesn't know how," she said. That earned her a quiet chuckle. Maybe we both need a distraction. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She just followed. The hotel room smelled faintly of rain and cedarwood. The city glowed beneath them, a restless ocean of lights and movement. Inside, time slowed. When he leaned in, she didn't resist. His touch was steady, not demanding, like he was memorizing something he wasn't supposed to keep. For the first time in months, Nia stopped feeling small. Stopped thinking about betrayal, loss, and humiliation. It was reckless, impulsive, and utterly wrong. But in that moment, it was also the only thing that felt right. Hours blurred. Words dissolved into silence. She learned the sound of his heartbeat against her ear, the weight of his hand tracing her spine, the quiet sighs that slipped through his self-control. It wasn't romance, it was release. 2 broken people grasping at something that felt alive. When she finally slept, it was the deep, dreamless sleep of someone emptied of pain. But morning came too quickly. And the bed beside her was cold. She sat up, the sheet clutched to her chest, her pulse flickering with disbelief. His jacket was gone. The room was spotless, impersonal, like he had never been there at all. Only the faint scent of rain lingered, and the memory of his voice when he'd whispered her name. Except, he'd never asked for it. She never knew his. Outside, the storm had passed, but Nia felt its echo inside her, a silence that stretched too wide, too deep. She would leave Shanghai that morning, thinking she had lost one more thing to a stranger. She didn't yet know she had gained something she could never lose. A heartbeat. A son. The elevator doors slid open to the top floor of Kairos Global Enterprises. Everything smelled of money and fear. Polished marble, silent assistants, the faint hiss of rain against glass 40 stories below. Nia Adesola stepped out as if she had never bled. Gone was the girl with shaking hands and rain-soaked clothes. The woman who walked into that boardroom now wore stillness like armor, black tailored suit, soft curls pinned with precision, eyes that gave nothing away. She had rehearsed this moment for years. Every word, every smile, every breath. The man at the head of the table looked up. Zhen Kairos. He hadn't changed much. The same sharp lines of a man built on control, only colder, harder. His gaze skimmed her face, pausing for a heartbeat that stretched too long. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Confusion? Then vanished. "Miss Adesola," he said, his tone clipped but courteous. "Our files say you represent Horizon Investments." She inclined her head. We're prepared to acquire 40% of your Asia division. A ripple moved through the room. 40% was a rescue and a threat. Zhen leaned back, fingers steepled. That's a bold offer. So is losing your company, she replied smoothly. The silence that followed was almost satisfying. He studied her again, and Nia felt the ghost of that long-ago night stir somewhere deep, the way he'd watched her then, like she was a secret he wanted to solve. She forced her pulse to steady. He didn't remember. He couldn't. A knock interrupted the standoff. His assistant entered, whispering something about the press waiting downstairs. When the door closed again, Nia rose. I'll expect your response by morning. I'm sure you understand urgency, Mr. Kairos. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. Have we met before? Her smile was polite, razor-thin. I don't believe so. Outside the glass doors, she exhaled for the first time in hours. Her reflection in the corridor mirror showed a calm woman, but beneath the surface her heart was a storm. He didn't recognize her. Good. Because when he finally did, she wanted him to feel every second of the 4 years she had spent rebuilding what he destroyed. At home that night, when she tucked Eli into bed, the boy reached up sleepily and touched her face. Mom, he murmured, you looked sad again today. She kissed his forehead. Just tired, baby. But her eyes stayed on the window, watching the city lights blink against the darkness. Somewhere out there, Zhen Kairos was trying to save his empire. And he had no idea that the woman who could destroy him had already begun. The next week unfolded like a chess match. Every meeting, every glance, every silence between them was a move, a counter, a test of nerve. Zhen Kairos didn't like surprises, and Nia Adesola was one he couldn't solve. She knew it, and used it. From the moment Horizon Investments took a seat on Kairos Global's board, she'd occupied his attention as completely as she did his space. Calm, composed, impossible to read. She challenged his projections, rewrote his figures, and never once looked afraid of him. Most people bent under Zhen's voice. She didn't. And that was what made him restless. By the third week, they were in his private office, sunlight spilling across the floor-to-ceiling windows. She stood across from him, pen in hand, reviewing merger documents like the company belonged to her. You question everything, he said at last, half amused, half irritated. That's how I make things better, she answered, not looking up. He tilted his head. Or break them. Her eyes flicked to his. Sometimes breaking is necessary. The words hung in the air. Zhen's gaze lingered longer than it should have, on her voice, her calm, her stillness. Something about her felt hauntingly familiar, like a song he'd once heard and forgotten until now. He didn't know why it unsettled him. That evening, Nia drove home through the slow hum of city lights. The mask she wore all day finally cracked when she parked and heard a small voice call. Mama. Eli ran toward her, curls bouncing, a crayon still tucked behind his ear. His laugh filled the apartment, a sound she'd protected for 4 years. She scooped him up, breathing in the warmth of his tiny body. You've been drawing again? He grinned. A tall man with sharp eyes. Like the one in your phone. Nia froze. You saw that? He nodded, proud of himself. He looks like me a little. Her throat tightened. Maybe just a little, baby. When Eli went to bed, she stood by the window again, watching the skyline burn orange and silver. This was dangerous. Too close. Zhen's instincts were sharp, and her son's eyes, those eyes, were beginning to echo his. She could feel the walls of her carefully built revenge closing in. 2 days later, an unexpected call from Zhen's assistant changed everything. Mr. Kairos would like to meet you off-site. There's a charity gala tomorrow night. He requested your presence. Requested. Not invited. Nia's fingers tightened around the phone. Tell him I don't attend social distractions. The assistant hesitated. He said it concerns the next investment round. Privately. She almost laughed. Of course it did. This was how men like Zhen played, on polished floors, with champagne and strategy. Fine. Let him think he was still in control. The next evening, she arrived at the gala draped in silver and quiet power. Heads turned as she walked in, and at the center of it all, Zhen waited, gaze fixed, expression unreadable. For the first time, his voice softened when he said, You clean up well, Miss Adesola. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. And you play your games well, Mr. Kairos. They stood there, surrounded by music and whispers, two enemies bound by something neither could yet name. He didn't know that the boy she kissed goodnight hours earlier was his son. And she didn't know that somewhere behind his stillness, he was already remembering the woman he'd lost in the rain. The boardroom was silent. No rain this time, just the steady hum of air and tension so thick it could break glass. Zhen Kairos stood by the window, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the skyline. Behind him, Nia waited, still, proud, unreadable. Between them sat a single folder, thin but heavy enough to change everything. He spoke first. "You lied to me." Her jaw tightened. "You never asked the truth." He turned. "You knew who I was when you came back." "Yes." "And still you let me." He stopped himself, anger fighting with disbelief. "You used me." Her laugh was soft, but it trembled. "Used you? Zhen, you destroyed me long before I came back." He stared at her, at the woman who had walked into his empire like a ghost of something he couldn't name. "I didn't even know you then." "You knew enough." Her voice cracked for the first time. "Your company stole my designs. My name was blacklisted because you signed the papers that buried me. You took everything, and I took one night to forget it. Only I didn't know the man I met was the same man who ruined me." Zhen's breath caught. His throat tightened. "That night." Her gaze lifted to his, wet and defiant. "That night gave me Eli." The world seemed to tilt. Zhen took a step forward, searching her face, as if denial might rewrite what he'd just heard. "Eli," he repeated slowly. "The boy in the photo on your desk?" She nodded once. "Your son." Silence. Then, a breath that was almost a plea. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you didn't deserve to know," she whispered. "Not until I saw what kind of man you really were." He turned away, pressing a hand to his forehead. The weight of 4 years crashed into him. Every deal, every moment, suddenly smaller than the truth standing behind him. "Finally," he said, low and hoarse, "I didn't know what my company did to you. I should have. That's on me." Nia blinked hard, fighting the sting in her eyes. She hadn't expected apology, not from him. "Words don't fix it." "I know," he said. "But maybe actions can." When he faced her again, the arrogance was gone. For once, he didn't look like the tycoon who owned half of Asia. He looked like a man who'd lost something he couldn't buy back. "I want to know him," he said quietly. "If you'll let me." Nia folded her arms, voice steady even as her heart trembled. "You don't get to walk into his life and erase the years you weren't there." "I'm not asking for erasure," he said. "Just a beginning." The room filled with silence again, not hostile this time, just heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, she exhaled. "I'll think about it." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Nia." When she looked back, his expression was raw, stripped of all pretense. "For what it's worth," he said, "that night wasn't just survival for me. It was the first time in a long time I felt human." Her reply was almost a whisper. "Then don't waste what's left of that humanity." The park was quiet except for the sound of children's laughter. Eli was on the swings, laughing with another boy while Nia watched from a bench. A shadow fell beside her. "Zhen." He didn't say anything, just sat down, leaving a careful space between them. Eli spotted him and waved. "Mama, that's the man from your office." Nia managed a smile. "Yes, baby. That's Mr. Kairos." The boy's grin widened. "He has the same eyes as me." Zhen's breath hitched. "He really does." Nia looked at her son, then at the man beside her. For the first time, she didn't see an enemy, just a complicated truth neither of them could undo. Maybe revenge wasn't about winning. Maybe it was about finally letting the storm pass. She stood, brushing the grass from her hands. "Come on, Eli. Say goodbye." Eli waved again, cheerful and bright. "Bye, Mr. Kairos." Zhen watched them go, the corners of his mouth softening just slightly. He had spent his life building empires. Now, for the first time, he wanted to build something real. Weeks later, a letter arrived on Nia's desk. No signature, just a single line. "For the boy with my eyes, and the woman who taught me to see." She didn't cry. She just smiled, the quiet, peaceful kind that comes when revenge finally turns into release. The truth had detonated quietly, no shouting, no chaos, just a folder laid open on Zhen Kairos's desk, and 4 years of pain spilling out in black ink. It wasn't him. It had never been him. The man who'd ordered the sabotage of Nia Adesola's company wasn't the CEO she thought. It was Ren Xiao, Zhen's former operations manager. He had stolen her work, rebranded her designs under Kairos Global's name, and silenced her with forged signatures that bore Zhen's stamp. Zhen's hands tightened around the evidence, fury simmering beneath his calm. "He used my authority," he said softly, "to ruin you." Nia watched him, cautious but uncertain. "Why would he?" "Because your project threatened his promotion," Zhen replied, his voice heavy. "And I was too blind to see it." For once, his composure fractured, not in anger, but regret. "You deserve to hate me, Nia. I earned that." She didn't speak. Her silence was the only power she had left, and yet, in that silence, something inside her began to shift. 3 days later, the story broke. Kairos Global executive arrested for corporate theft and fraud. Zhen had made sure of it. Every document, every forged deal, every lie Ren Xiao had spun was handed directly to the authorities. And when the press asked why he was exposing his own company, his answer was simple. Because truth is worth more than reputation. The world listened. Investors returned. But more importantly, so did Nia's name. Her firm, once buried and discredited, became front-page news again. Designs once labeled plagiarized were restored under her authorship. Invitations flooded in from partners who had once ignored her calls. And when she saw the press conference replayed on television, her throat tightened at his final line. "The credit for Horizon's rebirth belongs to one woman, Nia Adesola. I owe her my respect, my apology, and my future." 2 weeks later, he came to her office. No guards, no entourage, just him. Eli was there, sitting on the carpet with his crayons. When he saw Zhen, his face lit up. "Mr. Kairos," he exclaimed, holding up a picture. "I drew us." Zhen knelt beside him, smiling gently. "You did? Let me see." 3 stick figures stood under a bright sun, a woman, a man, and a little boy holding both their hands. Zhen's chest tightened. "That's beautiful, Eli." The boy grinned. "Mama says I can draw what I want. I want this." Nia stood a few feet away, her heart folding in on itself. "Eli," she said softly, "go wash up before dinner." When he left, the room went quiet again. Zhen rose slowly. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. I came to earn it." Nia met his gaze, steady, searching. "You've already done more than I expected." He shook his head. "Not enough. I can't change what you went through, but I can help rebuild what was stolen. Partner with me. On your terms this time." She hesitated, searching his face for the arrogance that used to be there, but it was gone. What stood before her wasn't the man she'd sworn to destroy. It was the one who had finally learned what loss meant. "And Eli?" she asked quietly. Zhen's voice softened. "He deserves to know his father. If you'll allow it, I want to be one." For a long moment, Nia said nothing. Then she reached for the folder he'd placed on her desk earlier, legal documents transferring a share of Kairos Global's design branch to her name. "You really did this?" He nodded. "You built it. I'm just giving it back." Something inside her broke, not in pain this time, but in release. 6 months later. Shanghai, again. But this time, the rain was soft, almost gentle. Eli ran ahead, chasing bubbles across the courtyard of their new headquarters, Adesola Kairos Innovations. Zhen and Nia walked side by side, a quiet understanding between them. "You realize," she said, "this doesn't mean you get to win every argument." He smiled. "I wouldn't dare." She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, saw not the men who had ruined her, but the one who had rebuilt her world piece by piece. When Eli turned back and called, "Come on, Mama. Papa." Both of them froze. Zhen's eyes met hers, uncertain. Nia smiled softly. "You heard him." He exhaled, a quiet laugh breaking through the weight of years. "Yeah, I did." They joined the boy on the grass, the city glowing around them, the air filled with something lighter than revenge, peace. The storm that once tore them apart had passed. What remained was stronger than both of them had ever imagined.